Hey everybody, thanks for listening to KCBC. This is your host, Michael Reisinger. Hey, I wanted to tell everybody who's left us a recent rating or review or subscribed on a monthly basis, thank you so much. You're helping us pay the studio fees, put in money for the camera fund. We will be bringing video to this podcast someday soon, hopefully before the end of 2024. Today's guest, very special guest here, I have Corey Balakrishnan. She is the founder and owner of the Sweat Vault LLC in Overland Park, Kansas. Corey, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Michael. I'm so stoked to be here and appreciate everything you're doing with this podcast for local small businesses in the area.
Yeah, I appreciate you too, because, I tell everybody how I met my guests, and you kind of started a fire on KCBC, like through you and your engagement. I got to learn about the events that you have at the Sweat Vault, where you invite entrepreneurs of multidisciplinary background to come and network. I noticed you were doing classes in kombucha tap rooms. You're very active in our community, and you're an obvious connector of people. Introduced us to Better Together. You're how I met Sid. It's just kind of like a convergence of all these awesome things by having you here on the show. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, community is so important to us ever since we moved here. And as we started these ventures as entrepreneurs, there's nothing more important than community to us, both myself and my husband. So anytime we can get out and kind of create this hype around community and building people up and really supporting other entrepreneurs, we do whatever we can.
Absolutely. So I think it's important to understand a little bit of your origin story. So I know you've mentioned in previous conversations, you have a strong corporate background. When I see the way that you run your classes and your social media, I'm wondering if there's some PR background there, communication. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about your journey before you started getting into being an entrepreneur and running things on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am from Oceanside, California, and it is a pretty penny to live in California. I think San Diego just got voted the most expensive place to live. So right. Being such, I started working at 15 and a half years old on Camp Pendleton as a Marine Corps brat. I was a little PX girl, so I completely, that's how my journey started. And I've always had that entrepreneurship. Watching my mom, she ran daycare, she ran several businesses growing up. So I was really able to see a strong woman in that role of running her own business. And so I think that's where it all sparked. But I've done everything. I think I'm multifaceted in my interest. And so I really wanted to know what it was like to work in a restaurant, to work in retail, to work in, just to find my passion. And if I could find leverage there as I grew up. Life kind of led me through all crazy paths where I was working for corporate fitness, for several years, saw how that was ran. I also helped small mom and pop boutique fitness studios, kind of really build up and create different franchises of that, and watched brands grow from the ground up. I worked for a very successful tattoo company. I was doing payroll and financing, and I was helping them with administrative work, and I got into kind of helping them with their social media as Instagram started growing, and then I eventually helped them expand into kind of aesthetics and tattoo removal, and I really helped expand small businesses on such a level. But it got to a point where I was working 6 different jobs when I met my husband. I was doing everything from being a dance instructor to a fitness instructor to being a payroll bookkeeper. And at some point, especially after I got pregnant, he goes, okay, at some point I got to call it stops. We have to reevaluate. And if you're capable of doing this for so many people at one time, just imagine what you could do if we invested that time, that energy into us and our dreams and your dreams. And so, yeah, that's basically exactly what we did post-pandemic, moving out here, and here we are doing all of it.
It's so cool. Yeah. He shared on the show about you guys buying the soft wash business. Yes. And it's so funny. Ever since he told me that, I've been seeing soft wash advertisements around my hood and stuff. Yeah. And so him explaining that, it sounded like that was a really cool experience where now that I'm meeting you and hearing your story, you got to just pour a lot of your experience in that. What drew you to focusing on, hot yoga, bar, fusion, kickboxing. Can you tell us a little bit about like all the things that you offer through Sweat Vault?
Yeah, I think it comes down to serendipity. I mean, I went to college with the intention of eventually going and becoming a physical therapist. And so my major studies were in dance with a minor in kinesiology. And so in that, I was really focused on going to Cal State Long Beach for their PT program. And so in that, I took all the human anatomy, physiology, everything. My father, who is a Marine veteran of 26 years, during one of his workups in 29 Palms, he had a terrible accident, temporarily went from the waist down, basically didn't have any feeling. And so through PT, everything, they were able to kind of recover that. And so he went from active duty to kind of this subcategory called Wounded Warrior Battalion, where a majority of injured personnel, they're either working their way to getting back to active duty, or it's kind of that stopping point for them where the military says, we've got to retire you. And so it's kind of that gray area, that stepping stone, if you will, to go either this way or that way. And so in that process, I moved back to help my family out during these times. And I was able to shadow his physical therapist, because that was something that maybe I wanted to do, is work with wounded veterans. And she had this yogic approach that I didn't even knew existed. I knew this Western culture monetization of yoga and what it looks like in a yoga studio in this corporate world but I never saw until that day really the power of yoga, until she was working. I mean, some of these guys were triple, quadruple amputees. It was just a body, and just to watch what she could do with breath work and micro yogic movements and stuff. And so it was really watching her approach that made me reevaluate, do I really want to go to PT school? Do I want to go an additional 6-8 years? Or do I want to look into becoming a yoga certified instructor? And I was very, very fortunate. My community college where I was living in Oceanside, they offered yoga programs through the college. And so it wasn't these little weekend corporate certification programs. It was these super certified collegiate level instructors and professors who knew everything about kinesiology. They knew everything about diet. They knew everything. And so it was really cool. I mean, I took a full 2 years to become 500 hours certified. And most people, they take 6 months to get their 200, another 6 months to get, because it's just compacted information. And so I was able to really retain and kind of spread out all of this information and really absorb it and understand who I wanted to be after these certifications in that realm. And so that's what really got me into yoga. And during that process, barre at the time, like you'll see reformer Pilates is now like the big thing because of LA.
Can you tell us what barre is too? Because my sister is all into it. And I tried to look it up.
So barre was created by Lottie Burke. And I always say Joseph Pilates, who invented Pilates, and Lottie Burke, who created barre. Essentially, they would have been best friends, I think, because they both were athletes in their own right mind who kind of had to overcome injury, and they wanted to create formats of fitness and movement to really help people anybody from a boxer to, who got injured during a boxing match, or a prima ballerina from New York Ballet Company, who these high-level athletes, when they get injured, how do you create these formats of movement that are truly medicine and kind of help them get back to longevity of movement? And so Lottie Burke created barre, and so it's very much dance. What I love about barre specifically is we work externally rotated. So in this Western culture, we walk toes forward, parallel. We have all these hip flexors. I mean, you talk about your psoas, your piriformis, all these low back issues, and it's because we sit in chairs all day. We drive in our cars all day. And so what Lottie Burke is, she created this fitness format where we're working externally rotated, which is really great for combating all these postures that we're in, these terrible postures for our mundane life. But it is also really beneficial. And what a lot of people don't talk about is pelvic floor therapy and all these things that are now coming to light, which I'm so stoked to be in a generation where women can talk about their pelvic floors, especially after having kids and all these things within the core and what that looks like. And so I mean, bars, I hold it so true to my heart because it's really the first format I taught in a group fitness setting.
Oh, cool.
And so I've been teaching it 12 plus years now, and it's just
so
one of
cool.
these great things. And I love having people come to me who have never taken bar before. But being a retired dancer, like I'm such a stickler on form, like form in Pilates, form in bar. And yeah, I really just enjoy doing all of it. And I'm actually really grateful. The last corporate company I worked for was a very fusion style studio. And so they offered, similar to my studio, they offered hot yoga, they offered Pilates, bar.
That's what
boxing.
fusion is,
That's
right?
what fusion,
it's the ability
yes.
to like bring other disciplines together.
Absolutely.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. And so, and there's so many benefits to that. I think so often we get caught up in, oh gosh, I'm paying this one studio and I've got to stick it out for a year. And, but life comes in waves and you can get bored and you can get unmotivated and you can kind of just fall out of your routine. And I find that what my clients love most is they may come to me with the intention of only taking hot yoga, but then it's just like throwing that fish line out and reeling it. Yes, absolutely.
That's the word that came to mind.
Yes, yeah, 100%. And so, but then it's so crazy because as they start to kind of create versatility in their portfolio of what exercises they're doing, it's crazy how much stronger they are in that like initial level format. And so people who come to me and they start taking my Pilates classes, it's crazy watching their yoga practice enhance because of the core work that they're doing in their Pilates.
That is so
and
cool.
So, yeah, it's just, there's so many layers to it. And I mean, even with my husband, now we have this huge group of bodybuilders and stuff. And it's so cool working with these people who, they can go to the gym and lift 1 million pounds, and they can build their muscles to look like Statue of David. But sometimes they can't even touch their toes. And so
I asked him at the end when we cut the mic off, I said, yeah, Stephanie, she's been meaning to get out to Sweat Vault. And he said, when you go there to take a class, let me know so I can go. And I go, well, I was talking about Stephanie. He's like, well, no, we got to go. I was like, you do yoga, because you don't often think about bodybuilders doing that. But I mean, I know now too, especially in my older age. And as I've gone through, injuries and things, yoga has been like a lifesaver when I can get to doing it. Like all those small muscles that you don't work, they start kicking your butt as you get older. And I know, I'm trying to reverse years of terrible posture. And I know how, when your shoulders slump, your head goes forward and then your lungs get smaller because your chest isn't open. And it's like paralyzing when I think about it too much. But he was telling me, the poses he has to do and stuff. And it's like, oh my gosh, I was talking with another guest about hip mobility and he brought it up and he goes, it's so important to me now because I want to live into my 80s and 90s. And then we talked about, fall risk.
Right.
Fall risk
yes.
is why life expectancy goes down. Because like when people start breaking their hips and stuff, it's a big deal. But oh my gosh. So you had a really strong personal connection and you watched the physical therapist who had that yoga background, went to get your education. How did you start like applying that into your day-to-day as a trainer and then to where it ultimately converged to Sweat Vault?
So I think when I was finishing up my 500-hour certification, I knew for a fact I didn't want to be one of these instructors, and there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not like crapping on anyone's style, right? But I just knew I didn't want to be that person who was told, okay, here's a set sequence. Here's how we want you to teach, what we want you to teach. At the base of it, I'm an artist and I get bored really easily. And so I don't want to go in. I want the artistic liberty and I want the benefits of that for my clients, not doing the same thing. So they're not getting super bored and they're not finding this like flat line of progress. So I think like the physical therapy approach of it, what I love now at this point as an instructor is any given class I walk in, if there's, if it's only a few people in class, I'm going to ask you individually, how are you feeling today? Like, how's your low back? How are your hips? How are your shoulders? Is there something that as a community we can kind of pinpoint and really work on that today? And so, and usually like it's the same things, right? It's your hips, it's your shoulders, it's this postural stuff. And so it's really great being at this point and like reflecting back of knowing that that's where I wanted to go is physical therapy. And here I am. Given 60 minutes, I can create a practice that can be so beneficial for someone, I'm not going to say as if they went to physical therapy. I'm not going to give myself that much credit, but I'm going to improve their life quality for even just 24 hours because we spent the time to really open up. And I think that's what brings people back is like, oh my gosh, for the rest of the day, I felt so amazing. Right. And then I slept terrible and I'm back to square one. But you come back in and slowly those micro changes continue to happen.
Absolutely. So I've been meaning to ask you, why the Sweat Vault? How did you choose that name and what is a vault?
Yeah. Okay. So when people ask me what I do, instead of saying, oh, I teach yoga and oh, I'm a fitness, I say I sweat for a living. I love to sweat. Cool. I love to sweat. I mean, it is my favorite thing. If I go a day without sweating, my entire day is off. And so that's my number one goal every day when I wake up, make sure you get a sweat in. And so the vault, when I think of vault and kind of the purpose behind it is the Sweat Vault. I wanted to create a space where you could truly go in for 1 hour. You could have access to everything that you feel like you're locking up emotionally, physically. You can really allow yourself that release and feel safe in that space. And you can leave it locked up there. You can leave it in the vault and you can go have your day. And so really just finding that healing space for people to feel like they can walk in, they can truly feel whatever they're going to feel, because I do believe certain movements and as human beings, we store traumas in our body. We store all
the body keeps the score,
yes,
right?
Yeah. And so this is a place that you can come, you can be guided. You don't really have to think about it. You don't have to show up and say, oh, what is my circuit going to be today? We're going to walk you through every single step of it, every step of the way. And we're going to support you through whether you have injuries. We're going to find modifications that you can work through that. And by the end of the class, you're moving that chi, you're moving that energy out of your body. You're doing it in a very specific, efficient way. And you're able to just leave it there to evaporate in the vault. And then when you come back, you could just keep dumping into the vault, as much as you need. And so that was it. It's just, it's a vault. It's something for safekeeping. It's where you keep your deepest, darkest secrets. It's where you keep your most prized possessions. It's where you grow.
That is so cool. You've been in business since what year did you break ground and open up? And gosh. I know you had challenges, yes. And I wanted to kind of ask you about that process. I interview to date, I've got probably half and half. I have folks who, work remotely, or like in Phil's case, his workplace is his studio or the set or whatever. But people who have to break ground on a building and go through construction. And that's the thing, we'll put all your socials in the episode notes so people can see how you built the Sweat Vault, and you were on the ladder and tearing down fascia board and all that stuff. But what has that process been like?
It's been a tough one. I would say to date that has been one of my biggest hurdles, if not the biggest hurdle. And so I had all intentions of opening up in November of 22. So I believe I signed my lease there in June or July. No, in February. And so I was supposed to have a 6-month build out essentially and open in November. I just, I ran into a GC that, it just is what it is at this point. There's no point in looking back, but it's been difficult, but I love being able to look back and really seeing all of that blood, sweat, and tears that has been put into that place. Because now with walls up, now with, 2 rooms, and, we still have a few finishing touches. Like when the city gave me that sign off after a 1.5 year delay. The city said, okay, you're good to open. I said, okay, I got to get people in the door. And so that's what I did. You can't work around it. And you just have to kind of go straight through it. So that's exactly what I did. I wasn't afraid to get my hands dirty. I wasn't afraid to, continue the hope, and, you just have to push through.
Absolutely. And you had a little one during that time too, or just before, right? So,
Yeah. So, well, our daughter, she was born in 2019.
Oh,
so
got it.
yeah.
Okay.
So she was 2 years old, but
Yeah.
it's been lovely. Now she's the ripe age of 4, and she's watched. I mean, we're on our 3rd startup, and so she's been there
cool.
every step of the way. And before all of this, I was a stay-at-home mom when we first moved here, and so. So yeah, it's just been really cool to watch her really mature as a 4-year-old in business.
Yeah.
It's been cool.
So I ask everybody, typically there's a point, like parent entrepreneurs, like, what is that like? How do you include her, bring her along? What does that look like? And you said she's maturing as a 4-year-old entrepreneur. I love that. So what's that been like?
I think it's been really cool because I think that same idea of community, really teaching her community is important, and seeing her once she sees these familiar faces and initially she's kind of standoffish, but then she understands, okay, these are patrons. We have to treat them as such. So she'll welcome you. Hi, welcome to the Sweat Vault if it's your first time. And then slowly but surely she'll start to greet you with a hug. And she'll see that you are in fact family. And it's just amazing watching her see these values and understand, me and her dad are working so hard for our dreams. And that's really why we risked it all. For me anyways, I think post-pandemic living in California, like you had mentioned, you kind of reevaluate your life at that point and you go, okay, yeah, we can continue working for other people. We can continue all these things, or we can do it for ourselves. We just have to make the move to middle America and, sacrifice, leaving all of my home and my familiarity, but for the betterment of our family and really her getting to see what it's like to work hard for something that you truly believe in. And that's what we couldn't ask anything more of that for her.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know, the kids, they'll ask about something that you're doing and then they'll say something like, I know for a while, my girls, I got 2 little girls, they wanted to be a therapist like Stephanie. And then when I'm editing the podcast, they'll come downstairs and they're like, they want to hear it. They want to know what's going on. And so I think that too, like their curiosity and childlike wonder, for me, that's been a reflecting point to say, man, that's where they're mentoring me in a way. You know what I mean? And they're reminding me, like, don't be so cold-hearted and when stuff comes at you as an entrepreneur, you know how it's really easy to say, move on.
Yeah.
I don't have time to feel that. I'm just going to move forward. And then the kids are like, what's going on? It's like they can read my face.
100%.
And they're the world's best psychologists too.
No, absolutely.
They're analyzing. So that's really cool. And do you guys have a daycare set up there, or what is that?
No, like? we don't have a daycare. She goes like 2-3 days a week somewhere else, just on the days that we're super busy. But other than that, I mean, when I'm working in the mornings, like Sid will bring her to the studio and then we'll do a little flip flop. He'll go work, she's so used to just, being down for whatever. But I totally agree with you. It's like, it's this reflection of you and like, here you are following your dreams and really feeding your inner child. And yet you have actual children that are these reflections of you. I mean, and it's so cool what they pick up, right? Like Harley, I mean, just watching her yoga practice at 4 years old enhance because she's watching like my videos and she's,
that is so cool.
And it's just so cool. It's so cool.
Yeah. Our daughters did Montessori for the first few years and they do some yoga in there. So we put on yoga bedtime. Is it Cosmic Kids yoga?
Yeah. She's great.
Dun, 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 dun.
Totally.
So I can hear it in my head, but we've been doing that every night for the last 2 years because their doctor said, hey, before they go to bed, a good thing, because, you start learning about every kid's needs, and this one has sensory needs and, all this. And we've got a lot of really wise counselors in our tribe I think, it's important in your healthcare, like you have specialists for things. It's almost like a bullpen, and like, so, I've got my chiropractor and I'm a direct primary care person and I know my physical therapists are, I know who my yoga person is, like just you have experts that kind of come along and help you with that. So like, but they love it. They absolutely love it. And it's so fun for them. And for me, like trying to do some of the stuff with them and work through my own flexibility stuff, it's like, I know that by them doing this, they're going to stay healthy. They're going to stay flexible. And it's just so cool. It's awesome how you can do what you do for a living and bring your kid into that, you know, and it's fun. And that's the other thing I was thinking about, like with the fusion stuff, when you were talking about, you didn't want to, bring in a program and then plug people like blocks into a program. Sorry, that's my way of saying it. The thing about what you do is it's really fun. And I know too, because I've seen some of your students, they'll share and they're wiped out in their car and they're like, I hated it, but I loved it or whatever, and so it keeps it interesting. And I'm sure that's what people, they're going to come back because they know that it's not going to be predictable and you're going to meet them where they're at and based on their needs. What are some, I guess, success stories that you've had? Because your audience is people of any age that want to do movement, right? What have you seen, like breakthroughs or things like that?
So, there's so many of them. And like you said, my clientele is so versatile. I have youngsters, ripe age of 18. And then I have women in their 70s who are coming to class consistently 3 to 4 days a week, And so I love that though. I love that versatility because it just shows you like there's always room for improvements. It doesn't matter if you've been practicing 10 years, 5 years, you're taking your first class that very day. It's, there's just something for everyone. And so, I think success stories have been building the community, one, and having these open conversations and building a place that feels safe to kind of bring questions in that maybe you don't feel safe at other types of studios. Because I've even experienced that culture. And I think it just happens when it's, that corporate style thing is you kind of get these clicks in there. And what I love is that the other day we started talking about colonics. I don't know if you know what that is, but like,
I do.
Yeah.
I do. And you might have even shared a resource or one of your students did.
Yeah. Modern colonics, Felicity. She's absolutely amazing.
Go.
And so we started the class and it was one of those ranges where I had 18-year-olds and 70-year-olds in the class. And we started talking about colonics and GI tract issues and all these things. And I think my favorite is when I have women who are coming to me and, they just learned that they have diastasis recti and they have the separation of their core. And so they've been doing these Pilates, these bars without even knowing that for themselves or being able to translate that into their instructor. And so me being able to give them tips and tricks to not only practice in studio, here's a safe modification where you're still working efficiently, but how do you go home and really maximize like this core work? And one of my clients, I think she was at like, they measure in fingers. And so she was at 3 fingers and now she's under 2 fingers. And so it's like being able to create these formats for women specifically for better, healthier pelvic floors and just feeling stronger. Like I love when people come to me and they're like, I feel so strong. I was working with 2-pound weights a couple weeks ago and now I'm up to 5 and 8-pound weights.
That is so badass.
Yeah. And so you see these like progressive milestones, right? And it's just so cool when people come to me and they go, man, I can't believe my results. Like, and it's not always about losing weight. I think there's this topic that gets thrown around a lot about, I'm working out to lose weight. And it's so much more than that. When you think about fitness and your movement structure and your movement habits daily, what is the ultimate goal? Like I'm pretty sure humanity just wants to be around and be mobile as long as possible. We just want to be healthy to watch our kids grow up and not have to sit on the sidelines when they want to go for a hike. Like, yeah. It's really just, it's finding quality of life and longevity of life, and longevity of quality of life. And so those are my favorite is when people all of a sudden can touch their toes and they could barely get to their knees. It's
Absolutely.
it seems little, but I know in the grand scheme of things, it translates into a better quality of life.
Absolutely. Well, and the thing that I've realized too, with people I know too, like I have friends that, through the pandemic, they stopped moving as much. And then when they started moving again, it's like they were 10 years back, of what they were able to do, because when you sit and with sitting, your hamstrings get a lot shorter and all that stuff happens. But, I lost my train of thought there with where I was going on that. You were talking about the success being the community, the conversations. I mean, when is an 18-year-old ever going to get to hear about, what happens to your GI tract, after childbirth or after, older age or on poor diet or whatever. And so you're getting all this cross communication and all this collaboration that's happening with people.
Longevity and quality of life. But you're absolutely right. Yeah. The hamstring shortening and everything changes. You stop for this amount of time, but you're really backtracking this amount of time.
Right.
And so, and again, with bodybuilder, husband, it's crazy because I watch him in a single season put on 90 pounds and take off 90 pounds, in a very strategic way. And it's crazy to watch his body and his body's capabilities, just in a matter of 6 months.
Right. So what is one of the biggest lessons right now that you're into this? Like, you've broken ground, your class sizes. I mean, it looks like you're filling the place up. What would you say is something that you've kind of learned and that's kind of helping you in the next 6 months as you look forward? Like, what's next for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so my schedule is expanding rapidly, I'm at this point where I have so many people coming to me and they love the weekend classes. They can make the weekend, but then, if they work a normal 9 to 5, it's kind of more difficult. And so I'm at a place now where, okay, I've got to add classes to fulfill the needs of this community. Right. And so, when I built this brand from the ground up, and as I look forward, it's really about listening to what the community needs and wants. I'm not going, I'm not a franchise. I don't have this whole group of marketing team telling me.
People have asked you that, right?
Oh,
if it's a franchise. Yeah,
I get that all the time. And I go, no, it's just me. I don't have this team who understands economic demographics and all the, they're telling me when to run this ad and how to run this ad. Right. I mean, it truly is just finding an understanding of that in the root level from my experiences and really playing to that. And I mean, some of it is trial and error. You can't really have a business without those phases, those chapters. Right. And so I'm stoked to finally have that baseline community, but I have this whole other community that they're like, we love it here. We just want more of it. We want more opportunities to be a part of it. And so that's a great problem to have, in my opinion, right? I mean, so adding early morning classes so people can get to work on time, all of that. So I'm looking at 5:45, 6 a.m., yoga classes that I'll be adding, and then evening classes. So it's kind of that spectrum. And so, we're just going to be growing at a rapid rate. I think I'm adding 4 to 6 new classes on the schedule per week in March.
Is so cool.
Yeah.
And so how do you do that? Because you have experts that come in and teach, I think Liv is one of your instructors. What does that demographic or makeup of instructors look like, and what are their specialties?
Right. So, when I interviewed, again, it was kind of dealing with all these delays during my interviews. And so I said, I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be my opening, you guys, but just stay,
as you're meeting these people,
as I'm meeting these people,
because you didn't come here knowing or being connected,
at all.
Yeah. And that, again, that speaks volumes for your ability to connect with others and how relational you are in building those relationships. But anyway, I just wanted to say, because I don't think we had set that stage yet, that you came here with no connections.
Right. Yeah. So, we came here. We didn't know anybody. We don't have family here. We didn't have any friends here. Sid took a corporate job to kind of get us set up initially before he opened the supplement shop. And it was really his bodybuilding career that started kind of trickling people in and me kind of explaining why yoga was so it was so great for them in that sport. And then it was just finding community members through the T-Biotics and stuff. And so when I look at my instructors and who I hire, it is so important to me that there's versatility because, and they have, I really kind of look for this like, je ne sais quoi, like do they shine through who they really are as an instructor? Because again, as an artist, first and foremost, I'm always an artist. So I'm going to really read you as an instructor and yeah, do you have that like special spark? And so with Liv, she has a very like trauma informed style teaching, and that's how kind of she got into yoga, is her personal experiences of her own traumas through her life and finding healing through yoga. And so she approaches that like we have our support and sweat, which is literally I drop the class price. So every Thursday evening, it's a $10 drop in, not our regular $25, and it's for anybody who's grieving, who's going through sobriety, who's going through. And so it's literally a time for everyone to come together, and there's a 15-minute kind of prelude in the beginning where if anybody needs to share, get something off their chest, and there's just community there to support you through that. And then the best way we know how to heal from that is through movement. And so then you go through a hot yoga where you're just sweating, you're crying, like whatever you need to get out, and that is support and sweat. And so I love that she kind of brought that awareness and brought that to this demographic, because I feel like it's not something that's normal, and it's something that is so beneficial for the community. So that's Liv. I mean, she's just an amazing person in general.
That sounds like an amazing convergence too of mental and physical health.
Absolutely.
And emotional, spiritual. Yeah. I mean, oh my
all
gosh.
Of it. Yeah. So
what a concept.
Yeah. Yeah. And then with Jess, you had her on Better Together, Jessica Ward. I mean, she, with the cardio dance that she provides, I mean, I didn't even know what Mixed Fit was that she taught, but when I saw the videos and stuff, I go, oh, this is cool. This is so much more than Zumba. This is, this is an
Zumba
awesome.
is the one, right?
Right.
That. And then what was the Body Beach one? Brazilian butt lift or whatever was another like samba type.
Right.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's
squirrels will run through here periodically.
I get it.
So,
I get it.
There's always, fit.
Yeah, and there was just something about her that seemed very like star quality, and she takes a room of people who are I'm not a very good dancer. They're tiptoeing in. They go, I don't know if I can do this, and then all of a sudden, I mean, she's killing them, and they're just having the time of their life, and they walk out and they're sweaty and they're red, and they go, I didn't look good, but I had a blast,
Well, they do it in front of a mirror too, right?
So she strategically kind of flips the room a little bit so that they're not, I guess it depends. If we get enough people in there who have been to class, they kind of understand the choreography of it.
Okay, got
then
it.
Maybe she'll switch. But she's very strategic, and that's such a like conscious. That's how I know you're a good instructor, is because you read the room, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, I've been so blessed with coming into contact with these amazing other instructors, and my whole thing is like I've said, I've worked and I've been this like mule for other companies where I'm just there doing my job. But I want to support each and every one of my instructors to grow and become the instructor they want. I'm never going to put limits on them. There is a certain expectation of really understanding anatomy. So we're providing a service at the Sweat Vault like no other in terms of alignment. We're working safely. We're working efficiently. We're fixing form. But you're going to get a very different experience depending on who the instructor you take. It's not going to be the same experience.
Right.
So
how do you do that as a leader? Okay. Because what you're talking about right now too is it's so cool. Like when you said the term like mule, right? Like there's images and pictures of that. And I see like, somebody who's very capable, very strong, somebody who has a discipline to keep going, but it's like somebody else is driving that person, right? Well, now you're business owner, you have instructors, you're finding the right people that have that spark. How do you develop them into the people they want to be, or how do you lead them and give them the experience so they can grow? Yeah.
So I think exposure, one, right? Like really exposing this is why they're special, and like celebrating that, like celebrating each individual for what they do. And I also think, reviews and stuff are important. I'm not really at that point in my business where I can take my name. You'll see it on the schedule a lot. Like I teach the majority of classes right now, and they're kind of trickled in. But, finding reviews and not being afraid as an owner, as a leader, to give those people feedback. And I think that's the only way we know how to grow, but doing it in a very structured way so that more in a way of asking questions. Hey, I noticed you do this. Why do you do this? And I notice if you structure it that way and you take your ego out of it, there's probably a whole thought process that you haven't even considered yourself, and you're going to learn something. And so I'm always in business to learn from the people. I mean, I'm not the one all be all know it all, Yeah. I am there to learn from these people. I am there to create an environment where even the teachers are learning from the students. I mean, that's been one of my favorite things too. And kind of credibility wise is we have so many people who are instructors, who are physical therapists, who are doctors, nurses.
I've noticed that too. Yeah. Like guys that I've interviewed, like they're like, oh yeah, I do classes at, ROKC or that gym or whatever. Yeah.
And so it's cool to get that credential and that credibility because, I've known a lot and I've gone to other yoga studios knowing that I'm 500 hours certified and maybe they're only 200 hour, but like at some point you have to take your ego out of it because you're never going to learn. You're never going to progress.
Right.
And so yeah, that's kind of where I stand in terms of just always being open and receptive to their why. And then at that point, if maybe I don't agree with it, then we'll have a discussion, right? But if you give me a valid reason, I'm like, wow, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
But like, now let's enhance that, right? Enhance it so it's a better experience for our clients. Because as much as I love your answer, maybe the clients aren't really understanding that. So explain that to them, right? Like open the communication pathways.
What you're talking about too, there's an author named Edgar Schein, and he wrote a book called Humble Inquiry: The Subtle Art of Asking Instead of Telling. And he talks about this as a leader, or even as somebody who is reporting to somebody, help me understand. What is it, like Stephen M. R. Covey, like his whole 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is like, seek first understanding and then you'll be understood, and taking that inquisitive, mindset. And I think too, like to be a learner, you talked about checking your ego. It's like, you have to do that so you can be open to learning. Right. What's the old quote? When the student's ready, the teacher will appear kind of thing. Yeah. Like you have to be ready to learn that. And what a cool moment that you're in right now too, where you were talking about reviews. Like you're already thinking of reviews to use that as a mechanism to like help people improve. So you said you have to add a bunch of classes.
Yes.
Do you want to put out a job ad on the podcast? Who are you looking for?
So I did not expect. Yeah, no. I think I'm okay because I have a list. I have a pile of people who I was interviewing, and I was at a point where I couldn't hire too many people on at that point in time, and so I kind of had to pick strategically. But there's a lot of people I'd like to revisit for the position first.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think social media, it's such a strong option, and being able to really kind of seek out the type of instructors you want before even having to place an ad. So I'm really fortunate to be in this industry that is super exposed on social media and being able to do that. That being said, though, there are great instructors that you don't have to be on Instagram to be a great instructor.
So, yeah, like I want to get your perspective on social media too, because it comes up on every interview. We talk about this because it is becoming a mandatory requirement. If you are a business or if you're a business owner and you see the way these companies are handling it, right? You have these giant companies, they're just like, hire an actor to be in a commercial and they think that that's going to get them more customer engagement. But you have YouTube influencers absolutely eating their lunch, sometimes on the same product that company is trying to sell. Social media is one of those things that I was like a ghost. Like you could not find my name in a search unless it was like tied to the band or like my LinkedIn profile or whatever. And now I'm like putting myself out there. I'm facing my cringe every day. Yeah. And I have to say too, that like Sid, when I posted the picture of me and him last Thursday, I think like 10 people started following the podcast. Yeah. And I told my wife, I was like, man, these people that are in the fitness industry are the most like excited. They're the most enthusiastic. You don't have to convince them of the value of this, of connecting with other people. Have you always been like good or open to social media? How did you kind of get there?
I think like I was a professional contemporary dancer. And so like, I kind of always put myself out there in a very like artistic way, if you will, like when I was personal. And then, you start to grow a family, and then it's like, okay, I got to keep all my family in the loop and kind of post about my kid every once in a while. But in terms of business, I mean, my perspective is there's building a brand at the base level, and then there's really exposing your brand. But I think there's more and more research being done that people would rather see the face behind the brand and understand your journey, your story, who you are as a person versus this whole entire brand that you're building. They want to know the journey, the face behind the brand, the person behind the brand, much more than they want to know the brand itself. And so, it becomes difficult, and, you get, it's just this ongoing thing. Trends always changing and trying to keep up with the Joneses and the algorithms. And so, I mean, my philosophy is, try to stay on top of it to like find your organic growth. But for the most part, if you just show up who you are and what you believe in and why you started this in the first place, like what that fire inside of you really is, those are always going to be the ones, that's going to draw the most authentic following, right? And you don't want these bots. You don't want all these people who are just following because, they know the brand or whatever, or because it's trending to follow this brand. But the quality of your following is going to be enhanced if you are showing up on social media as your authentic self, not the brand.
Absolutely. And I just, and what I was doing, so knowing that the Sweat Vault, the social media has been up, spring of 2023, and you're already clocking, over 1,000 followers. Like, so you've had like really quick growth. And so I feel like, you're accomplishing your mission of bringing through your authenticity. You also do the networking events. How many of those have you had at the Sweat Vault, and like who shows up typically to those?
So I've had quite a few, and I actually started those over at T-Biotics in Olathe. I started with a women's event where we raised funds for New House during Women's History Month. And so New House is a great nonprofit organization in North Kansas City for mother and children, a safe haven, if you will.
Right.
And so I really wanted to, give back to the community. I provided a yoga class, and then I invite other small woman-owned businesses. And it was just, it was great just to get these like-minded people and kind of create a networking event out of that, because I think as women, we kind of go through similar processes sometimes, and these challenges that we face as women in small business. I mean, it can be a very different story than being a man. And so we created that women's event, and that was probably my biggest event. Even in the Sweat Vault, I did one more women's event. I just invite like anybody with a small business. Like, I just want to support you and give you the same exposure that I'm building for myself and create that relationship. And so I have a lot of chiropractors that I'm now, kind of networking with, and who are members at the studio. I love having chiropractors in the house.
So awesome.
Yeah. And then I have I have acupuncturist, who's another California transplant, Amy. And I have a lot of realtors. I have a lot of like fitness trainers. I mean, anytime I meet a small business owner, I'm like, we get each other. Like, we don't even have to talk about it. Like, we're already in the same circle.
Yeah,
like,
whatever. It's like whatever they do, whatever you do, it's like there are common waves and themes, like, the delusional, like being able to see something that other people might think is crazy,
right? But
that this is the right thing.
Yeah.
I guess, what does that support look like? Like, what do you do when you're not motivated, you're not interviewing on a podcast, being asked about all the cool stuff you're doing? Like, what do you do to like recharge or, re-engage? How do you manage that stuff?
I mean, I my favorite thing is just getting a full room. So if I have to just like open a free class to like reignite my spirit, like, hey guys, come on Saturday, free classes, like, let's go, you know?
Oh,
and
that's awesome.
I just love filling the room. Like, I think my max capacity is like 22. And like, I'm like, I'll squeeze you in, the 23rd person, you know? I'm like, move your mats close. Like, I'm like, let's just sweat together. Cause there's something just so electric about people in the same room, like going through different chapters in their life, dealing with different stuff, and just like moving through it together. It's just so powerful, and hearing the breath and watching the sweat. And I don't know, that more than anything. And even Sid, he's like, hey, you want to do a free class? Like, that's his way of like, babe, like, let's get going again. You know,
Right.
like I see you starting this, like, you know, you're feeling a little burnt out, right? So like, let's go. I'll get 10 people there, and so will get 10 people there, and you know, let's just open up the room. And that always just, I mean, that fills my heart, because that ultimately, that's my dream, right? Like, I built this studio, and when I close my eyes, you know, during the dust and the construction and stuff, I'm like, one day there's gonna be mats filling this room, and people and heart and blood and sweat, and hopefully not blood, but you know what I mean? It's just a full experience. And it really, I mean, that's really what I do. And also, you know, being inspired by others, watching other people's journeys, especially other small business owners, just seeing how they overcome, and like, man, you're right. Like, there is no plan B. Like, you just have to keep going.
Right.
And yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that too on one of your reels. You were doing like the fast motion, sped up, double speed. And there's a point where it looked like you took a break from construction to like do some yoga, you know, during that process, you know. And I love too how Sid, who's out in the lobby hanging out right now, how he knows when you're getting there, and he says, hey, you ready for a free class? That's so cool, because you have to have that sort of iron sharpening iron, steel sharpening steel. I know that for me, you know, I was big time corporate guy, 9 to 5 or all that stuff. And I watched my wife. My wife has been doing like her own business like for years. And there's things that I finally understand now, you know, and we used to have these conversations, and I'd bring like a corporate mindset in to solve an entrepreneurial problem. That crap does not work.
It does not work.
Man, she did not like it. And I'm not saying anything I couldn't say in front of her, but like, you know, it's just that balance of like, you know, trying to help somebody figure it out. And sometimes, you know, we'll just like go on a walk. It's like, hey, you know what the problem is? We don't have any moving air in this room, and we need to actually go move. I love to just going to the beginning, how you're saying like your goal every day, you have to sweat. So, and I guess too, having yoga and bar, like that's a great thing that works even here in Kansas because of all the snow. You know, that's just so powerful. How do you feel about all the operational stuff that you're having to manage? You know, owning your own business, you know, how do you work through that?
I mean, I'm fortunate again. I did it for so many other people. I literally, you know, on the back end, I
saw accounting somewhere.
Yeah, I did accounting, bookkeeping, payroll. I mean, the advertisement stuff. When we owned the soft wash business, I was the entire administrative. So I did all the scheduling. I did all the meetings, all the, you know, I mean, I've done it for everyone else for so long. And so, but I will say what I struggle with now is if I could just teach 100% of the time, you know, of course I would do that. And so finding that fine line of understanding, like, you can't teach all the time because you can't pour from an empty cup. Like you have to really prioritize and strategically compartmentalize your time. And so, you know, if I could just be this wildflower and just like worry about teaching, that'd be great, but I can't. So yeah, I mean, it is a struggle, but I know I'll get there eventually to the point that I can afford to hand off the task to a tax prep company and this company and that company, and they can do all the work. And so, yeah, I'm excited to get to that point where I can really start kind of handing the keys over to other people to maximize work time efficiency.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just talking to you, I don't anticipate it's a struggle for you to delegate. Do you feel like delegation is one of those things? I mean, how do you do that? Because you're really good at doing what you do. Right. And it sounds like you're really mindful at bringing on people as instructors. Yeah. How do you think that process will be, I guess, when you get to that point?
I think that if I was if I was to individually sit back, I would be a terrible delegator. But I go into this understanding it's a business and understanding that what it takes for a business to be successful requires that. And so like, it's not my natural way of thinking. It's not my natural, set and tone. It really is something that I have to remind myself, like, this is a business. You want it to run efficiently. And so you're going to have to, again, it's just your ego. Your ego can be the killer of all dreams. Like, if you have this ego who's constantly telling you you're the best, you can do it all, that is going to be your ultimate downfall. And so I have to put that ego in check, even in something as simple as, like, right now, adding those 6 a.m. classes. I have to really evaluate, can I teach those 6 a.m.? Or is that one extra class a week going to put me over the edge? Because sometimes that's it. It's just that one class. And I'm not necessarily somebody who likes to teach at 6 a.m. And so it's kind of that position of, okay, do I push myself to do it? Or do I just find somebody who enjoys it and, like, is good at it? Oh, you got some people out there. They're like, part of the 4:30 club, they love getting up there. Yeah. I don't understand it. But I know that they're tried and true, and I know that's important to consider. And so, yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess that's really cool too, especially if you have, like, practitioners coming in, because you'll find those people, if you see that in them, on the floor, you're like, hey, what would you think about maybe doing a couple classes a week or whatever? That is just so cool. Is there anything that we didn't discuss during this time? We went through your origin, kind of why you do what you do. Talked a little bit about, what's coming up. I think that's it, really. I love that we can talk about mental health and the contributions of physical movement. It doesn't have to be fitness. It doesn't have to be the gym. It doesn't have to be, but finding something, whatever that one thing is, and not giving up. And just finding that one thing that really feeds your soul and fulfills you so that you can be the best version of yourself. Absolutely. So the best way for people to find you, I know I'll put your address on the show notes, but what's the best way to engage with the business? And it would be on our Instagram, at The Sweat Vault. My email address is info at thesweatvault.com, website, thesweatvault.com. It's all pretty much there, but I would say Instagram is probably the best, quickest way to get in touch. Awesome. Corey, I so appreciate you coming on the show. We'll have to do it again, sometime next year. Of course, our network, any way we can help, we'd love to. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to KCBC. Again, support Corey. Remember, when you engage with our guests and their businesses, you're bringing more awareness to what they do so that other people can discover them and think they're just as awesome as we do here on KCBC. Appreciate you all listening. Thanks so much.